we constantly look to heroes outside the country, but I just want to quote something from his book. He said, "I climbed a mountain with many more mountains to climb. I climbed a mountain with many more mountains to climb." There's a saying that members of Pakatan Rakyat always use. Every time a blow comes to you, every time a blow hits at you, the response is, lawan tetap lawan. Betul tak? So let's remember that with every mountain that we climb, there's always another one to climb. And there's always hope at the end. So coming back to my thesis, I'm talking about freedoms. Freedom, kebebasan. Apa itu kebebasan? We were supposed to have some sort of freedom when we celebrated Merdeka, isn't it? 1957. But was that really freedom? Did that really happen? We can debate about that later during the question and answer session. But again, my understanding of it was that much of what we have celebrated before was really a fallacy. 1Malaysia. 1Malaysia seeks to talk about freedoms and reforms. But again, what happened in Perak tells me that everything he says is not sincere. Let's face it, we are waking up to a very new political fabric today. Read what people are writing on the blogs. Think and look at what the young people are really saying to each other. I want to talk about three sorts of freedoms that I envision for the future of the country. Number one, we need to be free from the negative trappings of identity. I think that many of us are trapped in this identity circle and cycle. You know, we talk about things that divide us, apparently. Ethnicity, religion, Islam, culture, language. Now let me say that we, all of us as Malaysians, should be able to assume these roles without them being divisive factors. We need to be proud of being Malay, Chinese and Indians, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever it is. But these must not be barriers to the trust that we have amongst us today, like tonight. We must be intelligent, we must be able to separate what are the barriers and what are the unifying factors so that we don't have to call each other enemies. That's the first freedom. The second freedom, from insecurity and distrust, is somewhat related to the first one. We need to rid ourselves of this whole, my share, your share. Kaum lainnya akan merampaskan hak kami. And this holds true for both the Malays and the non-Malays, yeah? Okay, let me remind also that the non-Malays sometimes have a tendency of talking about this whole my share, your share. Let's get rid of that. Freeing ourselves from the insecurity and distrust. The third freedom, freedom of choice and of access. Access to what? To information. We need to look at reviewing or repealing the entire Official Secrets Act, for example, and enacting a Freedom of Information Act so that people can access information and know how they can be publicly informed and keep governments, including the state government like me, accountable. Freedom of access to the media. Now, this is the real laughing stock. When instructions keep coming from the top, when calls keep coming, do not report this or that, do not link a certain person to a certain case, I'm not saying names. Freedom of expression, the ability to peacefully gather and have a candlelight vigil for a friend that we know is in pain and arrested somewhere in a lockup. So those are the three freedoms I want to talk about. And next, I hope my 10 minutes is not up because I just want to talk very, very quickly about what I think we need to get there. We have a very clear vision and a goal and objective at the end, but oftentimes we are interrupted by lots of distractions. Imagine it's a long and winding path that is constantly poked at with poison ivy and other sorts of distractions. Some of this has already been said before, but I'm going to repeat it because I think it's important. Number one, we need institutional reform. Okay? It's a very big sounding word like institutional reform. What does that mean, right? But it's basically to reverse the process that has weakened all the institutions in the country, where the executive power has been so much abused that it has taken control using politically all the other institutions of civil service, the police, the judiciary, the legislature, the media, and sometimes even civil society. We need to beef up separation of powers with proper understanding and interpretation of the Constitution, the Federal Constitution, the original Federal Constitution. Yeah. Number two, I think it's really time that we need to have a complete overhaul of the policies that we have today. Complete revamp. What we have today is just mere piecemeal following on of regimes of past. We need to have an immediate roadmap, and I think this is something that Pakatan Rakyat should take up. A roadmap on almost every policy that has become defunct, irrelevant, and archaic in the country. What do I mean by those? I mean economic policy, and as I read through them, think about it. Economic policy, do we have anything new and refreshing? Healthcare policy, does it work for you and I? Transportation policy, public transport, how many of you take public transport? Environment policy, youth policy, how do we empower the young, your children, your grandchildren, to be part of the country's development? Science and technology policy, culture policy, and the list goes on and on. And to me, one of the most important things that we need to reform is education policy. It starts at the schools. We need to begin to think of how to raise up a generation of Malaysians who can think differently, who can break out of these traditional little boxes that we have given to them. You know, we cannot give a legacy to the children and grandchildren of Malaysia that are stuck in the traps of race and religion anymore. Yeah. We need to be able to replace this paradigm with a new paradigm which focuses on common values and principles that you and I can share. We need to replace that with values of human dignity, and every religion talks about that. We believe that each of us has a common dignity. And finally, dismantling of race-based party politics. The end of that. So that race and religion are no longer used as political tools to advance political agendas. So we need to wake up to that. Finally, what I hope to see is a much more mature ideological politics. The way we talk about politics, you know, in some of the other countries around the world, there's always a left and a right in the ideological framework, but in Malaysia we don't have that. We need to have a more mature discourse. So my conclusion is, number one, register to vote. At the end of the day, it's all about the elections. Remind everyone you know who has not registered to vote to get out and register to vote now. And number two, simple really. Our duty is to remind everyone of what happened in Perak this year. For the next general elections, if there's anything that you want to remember from my speech tonight, remember this. That you must remember. Ingat Perak. Terima kasih.